All right, we're live again. So welcome to another session of the Superheroes Series Spotlight. Now we're happy to have Yoseph West from Relay Financial. Yoseph, welcome.
Awesome to be here, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's really good to have you on. And for our viewers now, if you could give a brief background about yourself and what you're doing over at Relay Financial.
Sure. I won't bore you with the full bio, but I'll give you the quick notes. Relay is next generation banking for employer SMBs. We're built for businesses with 2 to 100 employees. We make it really easy to collaborate with your team, automate all your bills with approval workflows like financial controls, as well as manage your expenses all under one roof, all in one neat package. I've been around for a couple of years, just raised a Series A from Bain Capital, and really excited about kind of the disruption happening in the business banking space. For myself, I've been working in SMB fintech for most of my career. First built the first growth team inside of Wave, a company in Toronto that was acquired by H&R Block for $400 million, and then joined a company called HubDoc as a third employee and helped scale that up to 25,000 paying small businesses, and built out a global marketing function across Toronto, Sydney, and London. And that company was acquired by Xero out of New Zealand in 2018.
Yeah, it's quite the extensive history with fintech, and then also the small medium business banking. What triggered you to just transition and do your own thing? Coming from the backgrounds that you had, what brought it to you saying, this is the time I'm going to go focus on my own product here and take it to market?
Yeah, I mean, coming out of university, I had actually started my own company, and that's how I ended up at Wave. Or that company had gotten acqui-hired by Wave. So the period of time I spent at HubDoc, I spent there 4.5 years prior to the acquisition. That was kind of like the detour to me from a career perspective. Yeah. And during that time, I'd kept an Evernote notebook. I guess that makes me sound old now that everyone uses Notion, right? But I had a little notebook with all any idea that popped into my brain, and that a pain point that we experienced as we were growing that business and going from a small number of people to 100 people, right? And one of those challenges was business banking. And so after spending 4.5 years there working and learning and really just having a great experience, I knew it was time to go out on my own and start something with my co-founder, Paul.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, and bringing that experience is obviously, skipping around that lot of discovery phases in areas where you already have that experience. As far as, I guess, business banking in the challenger landscape, obviously it's the neobanking or challenging banking was considered focused on consumers to start. Right. Where do you think you've entered the market as far as business banking? Is it still in an infancy of what you guys are bringing to the small businesses? Are they adapt and ready for digital transformation? And if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing from your clients today.
Sure. Yeah. I want to take a quick 10-second detour on that. You touched on a couple things there around, the trend going as consumer first and then moving across the business. That was actually one of the core theses. It was a core thesis that we had back in 2018 when we started Relay. We saw that, Chime was getting to scale. They were adding more bank accounts in Wells Fargo and Citibank per month. This was summer 2018. Finally, we were going to have a fintech kind of neobank winner in the consumer space. And we felt like it was a good time to make a bet around business banking because these trends typically go consumer first and then small business. And so, with millennials are, we're getting old, right? Bit by bit, we're we're taking up a lot of the workforce. And so these millennial business owners are expecting, consumer level experiences in their, business products. And it's still early innings. It's so early. I was talking to someone about business neobanks and how often we see any of our competitors in the marketplace. Right. And what people struggle to understand is how large banking is as a space, right? There's 5,000 financial institutions in the US. The 1,800th largest bank has $300 million in assets. It is crazy. And so, 70% of the customers that we're seeing adopting Relay and switching across and, getting a better banking experience, they're coming from Wells Fargo, they're coming from Bank of America, they're coming from a, local regional bank. And so, yeah, adoption is accelerating, and we're seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, and I guess as you mentioned, where you worked previous, they were being hit at different angles, just not at stored value. right? So they're being hinted at maybe that accounts payable aspect, or just accounting, for example, getting digitized that way. And it's kind of like that flip on switch. Why don't we add those features with stored value and kind of bring to market? Was there certain areas that you sort of focused on as a phase one where you could really gain customer traction, where you're headed to go, next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the theme that you're talking about there is like we saw over the last 10 years, there was kind of like an unbundling from the bank account, right? Yeah. And like Bill.com is like the poster child for that. They took online bill pay in banks and said, this sucks. Let's build like a point solution for that. And let's do it for accounts receivable and AP, like accounts payable, like your bills. Yeah. And they were able to scale this like amazing business. And what Renee has built is like, it's world-class, obviously, just looking at the results. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing now is this cycle shift where software is a lot easier to build. Getting the financial infrastructure up and running, you can kind of plug into some APIs to be able to deliver these services. It's much easier today to actually build a Bill.com than it was, when Bill.com started. And so what we're seeing from like a macro perspective in the space is that people are now seeing a cycle of rebundling back into the bank account. And so when we thought about Relay, when we were starting this thing in 2018, we thought, how do we get people to actually switch across to, our service? And we weren't going after like freelancers or solopreneurs. That wasn't really the market that we felt like was most attractive in the space. We really wanted to focus on those employer SMBs, so 2 to 100 employees, because that's where there's a lot of financial complexity that comes in, not only from a collaboration perspective, but also from like, a back office automation view. And so to answer your question, finally, Chris, where we started was really around collaborative banking. So think about it as like checking accounts, cards, payments, with a user permission layer on top. And then where we went deeper, because we got a lot of requests from our customers, was around AP automation. So we centralize all your bills. You have financial controls baked in. So, I could say, hey, Chris, I want to pay this bill. You have to approve it before I can pay it. And then you get best-in-class payment settlement times because we're actually the banking service.
Yeah, and again, it's like bundling that services that the businesses had to go out and kind of have individual relationships with each of the areas that they were looking for. And I guess also, commercially, the traditional banks take, absurd margins on certain areas of fees and things like that, where your value is actually providing that automation. So is the expectation as they, transition over to you, there's a lot of education to your customers today of how to operate with a tech first type of banking solution rather than a transactional first type of solution that they were previously used to?
To a certain extent, definitely. Like there's a mind shift between thinking of banking as it was, and then I would say that the future of banking is like banking plus spend management, and then eventually you kind of like tie in accounting. Right? Like, I think phase 1 and phase 2 is still like we're all battling it out, basically. Mm-hmm. And so there is a bit of a mind shift to think, oh, I can actually do this from my bank, right? And I can get started. And I think there is also a little bit of a legacy. Hey, what does it mean to switch banks? Anytime we're asked to switch banks, we kind of think like, oh my God, like what hell am I going to have to go through to go from like a shitty experience at say Wells Fargo across to like Bank of America. And that's really not the paradigm that we're living in today. And so telling people about the value, it's like, hey, you don't have to do it all at once. Like, let's pick off a part of your transactions, like say your bill management, and move it across to Relay. Let's build some trust. And over time, you'll just organically move everything across because it's easier, faster, better.
Right, and as you mentioned earlier, the founders of these businesses a lot of times are millennials who actually expect these types of services out of any solution that they use. I'd like to flip the switch a little bit here and go into, I guess, the business side of it and of how you guys got started. Obviously, saying you're going to start a bank maybe 5 to 10 years ago, it sounds absurd, but obviously there's a different way to go about it now, especially here in the States, getting that sponsorship. Could you talk a little bit about, I guess, that process for you and how you kind of laid all your options out and kind of what was your selections as far as not who they are, but what was your priorities right. Of how to select who your partners and vendors are?
Yeah, I think everything starts with the customer. So where we started was like, what is the best possible experience? Like barring funding, barring capital requirements, like what would be the best experience for our customers? And obviously the best experience is if you can own the whole stack yourself and run it, right? And so we're like, okay, we know this isn't the answer. We know that we're not going to go and build it all ourselves, but we need to be able to have like a thoughtful answer as to why.
Yeah.
And so we went out and talked to like the regulators to understand like how much it would actually cost, like capital requirements, and really got into like, the $100 million plus that you're going to have to go and raise, and the 4 years, and all the people from banking that you're going to have to hire. I don't know what they would be doing for those 4 years, but they would have to be on payroll, right?
They're all on retainer.
Yeah, exactly. They have a business card, and that counts for something. And so it was like, okay, obviously that's not the way to do it. And then we kind of looked at working directly with a bank, and we kind of seen some competitors, spin their wheels for 2+ years and burn through their seed capital, just trying to get live. Insanely difficult in that context. And then what we realized is, I think when you have a software mindset, you think about speed to market and like how do you actually get proof points around the business as quickly as possible and the market opportunity. And so we realized that leveraging a banking as a service provider was the fastest route to market. And so we started to explore that, and that's actually how we got to market as quickly as we did. And then over time, we've kind of leveraged that thinking to see how we can improve the pace of innovation in our product or improve the quality of our product. So as an example, just to pump your tires, Chris, on the international wires front, we're exploring better alternatives that were perhaps cheaper and faster for our customers, and integrated currency cloud to be able to deliver best in class like payment settlement times for international wires, as well as more cost effective options for our customers.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to come down to just listening to what you said, listening to your end customer, seeing what they need, and kind of having that ability to transition into new products and maybe optimize ones that you already have, which obviously in the traditional financial sector is a pretty difficult task to operate like. As far as how do you guys prioritize what's next? Obviously you mentioned it's really about listening to that customer, but how easy is it for you to kind of look into new products from wearing your hats and look at how to go ahead and build that, and then navigating that maybe through a vendor or looking at building it yourself through the financial institution?
Sure. Yeah. I think the challenge for folks in our seat, or sitting in our from our perspective, is that everyone is promising that their product is going to work perfectly, right? Whether you're talking to international wire service provider, or you're talking to someone who does KYC or KYB, and fraud squaring, whatever it is, everyone's giving you this very rosy picture. And as you get into it, and I think especially on like the fraud side, the only way to actually like assess whether these vendors are like high quality is to do like a proof of concept, to actually write code, get it live for your product, because all of this stuff is so new, right? Mm-hmm. Like taking fraud as an example, every section of fraud, identity fraud, behavioral, transactional, these are significant parts of traditional financial institutions, right? And us as software companies are like, oh, we're going to go figure all of that out. We're going to be able to do it all in one. And there's software, and there's kind of a coalescence of service providers that are helping us do this, but it is not a proven space at all. I think it's something that we're all learning how to do. And I think that's the big challenge for folks like us. It's figuring out how to run the tests and to get a strong view into what is the best in class solution for a given problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and you're essentially paving the ground for others to be able to kind of not replicate, but at least understand the model a bit further. We see that especially entering the U.S. market as a international company. It was very difficult to get the banks understanding exactly what we're trying to do, and then bringing it down market after that is also a learning experience. And I think we're all doing it together, right? And I think that's the beauty of the collaboration in the U.S. is working through this ecosystem type of partnership, working with multiple partners and learning from each other, and willing to adapt, I guess, is another area that we're focused on as well. You guys have entered the U.S. market. I know you are based up in Canada. Do you have any plans to enter new markets with your product today?
I think our hope is to be live in Canada, in the next year or so. I think the challenge is the U.S. market is just structurally so different and so much more competitive. And what I mean there is just traditional financial institutions. As we talked about, there's 5,000 in the U.S. Yeah. In Canada, there's like 5 big ones, and then there's maybe 20 or 30, second-tier financial institutions. So there isn't a huge pressure for them to become competitive.
And when you are, I guess the companies they're working with today, is there like a lot of requests to work in like specific marketplaces as well, so to tie into like the Shopify's of the world, or are those the types of customers that you're winning business from, and kind of forcing you guys to go into certain directions with integrations and things like that?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about true small business, ignoring kind of the West Coast startup or traditional like venture-backed company, the majority of SMBs in the U.S. are these traditional like Hardware America small business. They could be running a medical facility franchise,
Yeah.
or whatever they're doing, and the challenges that they have are actually like pretty universal. It is very horizontal, and so are there pulls towards like the Shopify ecosystem? Certainly. Like if you're running a digital bank, 25% of your business will be e-commerce,
Right. Right.
at the very least. And so we do see pull into certain segments, and are we exploring integrations into, vertical specific products? Certainly, it's a consideration. I think it's always a balance between solving for kind of the greatest number and then also delivering like really deep value.
Yeah, I mean, obviously key pieces, and then to close it out, if in the last year, obviously there's been quite a transition and a necessity to have a digital offering for these SMEs that were able to stand up and still operate. Were there certain areas that you didn't focus on that kind of became out of necessity? You had to build out or partner with to be able to facilitate the needs for some of these corporates that you're working with today, or SMEs?
Yeah, I can't say that today that's necessarily been true. I think in the next 12 months that will be very true.
Okay.
So today, the core business banking product, it's checking accounts, it's business debit cards, it's payments, right? I think over time, just from a financial services perspective, we're going to have to layer in credit or lending of some sort. I think that's a natural next step, and because of the types of businesses we're serving, these are employer SMBs, right? They need access to credit, and they're growing
Right.
quickly. And so I think that's the next stage.
Yeah, and I 100% think that's the next wave. And have you had conversations with, I would imagine, like, your partner banks, and is that something that they're looking at doing to provide as a service for someone like you, or would you have to use another third-party service to be able to provide that? Or
Yeah, I think we'd be able to do it in-house if or with our existing provider, if that's what we decided to do. I think we're still, it's early enough, candidly, that we're still evaluating what the best route would be.
Yeah, it's an exciting space to see, and obviously it's still in its infancy. It's the few offerings that are out there as of today, and you guys are obviously taking on quite a good of the market share. So it's awesome to help you where we can, for sure, in that regard.
Absolutely. Well, it's great working with you guys.
Yeah. Well, Yoseph, what's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you for potential partnerships?
Absolutely. So check out our website, relayfi.com. That's relayfi.com. Send me an email. Hopefully you can see my name, but it's Yoseph, Yoseph @relayfi.com. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, really good stuff here, and we'll be sure obviously to post it after. So I just want to give a shout out to our marketing team. It's been an awesome journey this week, and done a hell of a job, creating all this content and bringing users on. And we have one more session left. It's Remitby. We'll be on at 2 p Eastern time. Got to get my time zones right here. 11 Pacific. So we'll see you guys in another hour or so. And great having you on here.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.